I've wanted to make a video about Blair Waldorf for some time now, and I honestly thought this was going to be that video, but then something happened. I was looking at my Jess Mariano video, the one where I break down why he wasn't just one of Rory Gilmore's infamous boyfriends, he was actually the worst one. And while reading the comments, I noticed a pattern. The only way people defend Jess after watching that video is by blaming everyone else. Rory, Lorelai, Logan, the grandparents, sometimes all four at once. And look, I am fully aware that all these characters are deeply flawed in their own ways. But I need to say that you're actually watching the show wrong. I didn't even know that was possible, but apparently it is. Because what you're doing is you watch a character make every bad decision possible, and because you relate to them, which by the way is a red flag on its own, you start looking for someone else to blame. And I really hope that is not how you operate in real life, because that mindset is a recipe for disaster. Now let's talk about something that genuinely shocked me. There are people who think that Rory cheating on Dean somehow justifies Jess being emotionally and verbally abusive towards her. And I have news for you. It does not. Even fictional characters don't deserve abuse. If you don't like someone, you don't date them. I know. Groundbreaking. The same thing applies to privilege. If you don't like rich people, don't date rich people. You don't get to date someone wealthy and then bully them for being wealthy. That's not how it works. I understand that this tangent is long and unexpected, but these comments made me realize something. Jess had every right to break up with Rory for cheating, for indecisiveness, for being rich, for having shinier hair than him. But what he did not have the right to do was stay with her and torture her. I've rewatched the show multiple times, and Jess is always in the wrong. And before you go in the comments and say, what about Rory's mistake? That is what this video is all about. We're going to explore all of the things that are wrong with Rory because we're not pretending she's perfect, and we're going to compare her to Blair Waldorf, another character that I feel is very similar to Rory but also very different from Rory. So why is it that when Blair does it, we approve, but when Rory does it, we judge her for it? Let's get into it. Let's talk about Blair and Rory's ambitious nature. Rory's goal is to be a journalist, a successful journalist who travels the world. It's very specific. Blair, on the other hand, wants to be a powerful woman. Now, what does that look like? It means working for a magazine. It means trying to get into secret societies. It means marrying a prince and becoming a part of Monaco's royal family. But eventually, what she does is she finds herself running her mother's company and becoming an actual dictator of taste. Rory has been praised senseless her entire life for one thing and one thing only, being smart. Not street smart, book smart. She has perfect grades and she's always studying and is not interested in anything that normal teenagers are interested in. Even her boyfriend Dean is like, oh, I like to watch you read. You're so focused, which aside from the fact that this is pure I'm not like other girls garbage, is a textbook gifted child trope which is destined to end in burnout. In comparison, Blair's got the grades. She's got her sights set on Yale. And yet, you see her throw parties, sleepovers, and she's got boyfriend problems. She has a well-rounded, interesting life. There's this point in the show where Blair has to make a choice between who she's dating, and her mom she's concerned. So Blair immediately dismisses the issue and says, you probably think less of me for even caring about men. And her mom says something so profound that even moguls have hearts, which is something Rory simply cannot make peace with. This is a Rory specific problem. Remember the scene where Lane becomes a cheerleader and she has to hide it from Rory? That's the problem. Blair is the perfect example of someone who can be judgmental, but does not use it to a point where her own judgments imprison her. You can't say the same for Rory. She's so busy being the cool girl and looking down on uncool subjects to listen to Avril Lavigne that she deprives herself of having fun. The reason why we love Blair so much is because we can actually relate to her. No matter how unconventional she seems, Rory you simply cannot relate to. And that is the problem. Rory is mind-numbingly boring. Blair works hard, but she allows herself to have fun. Rory, on the other hand, is a two-dimensional, self-proclaimed cool girl who has never felt the need to develop a personality. Because being an academic weapon was the personality she settled for. So what happens when the only personality trait you have is challenged? You know where I'm going with this. We're going to finally answer the question, was Mitchum Huntsberger right or wrong about Rory? Now, before I criticize Rory any further, I just need to make a disclaimer. Mitchum Huntsberger is an entitled, insecure old man who, for all intents and purposes, offered Rory a position only after he realized that his even more entitled and insecure father said some cruel things to a Gilmore, and that could, in the future, hurt him. Now, why would that be a problem? Here's why. This is not just my opinion, by the way. This is an established fact. Richard Gilmore is a very influential and powerful man in the insurance world. And you can't exactly do rich people things without insurance, okay? Insurance is essential. Now, Richard has a track record of being vengeful. A certain Digger comes to mind. If Mitchum knew about what happened with Jason Stiles, and he did because people were talking, he would know better than to bully Rory Gilmore. So giving Rory an internship was a way to manage the situation. It does not change the fact that the family thought less of Rory and Lorelai and their modern lifestyle. And it was something they couldn't accommodate in Logan's future wife, even though he wasn't looking for a wife, even though they just started dating. They wanted to keep good terms with the Gilmores, but they were not going to let Rory think she was anything special. So how does he achieve that? He gives her an internship, it's an olive branch, and then proceeds to tell her that she does not have what it takes to be a journalist. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that Mitchum and his wife had ulterior motive. But did he know for a fact that Rory would go off, drop out of Yale, and steal a boat at the first sign of criticism? No. Rory absolutely took it too far. And that is why I think Rory was also wrong. That's the problem. Mitchum Huntsberger was not right about Rory. He was just a bully. He probably says that to everyone. But what he said turned out to be prophetic. Why? Because Rory has no concept of struggle. It's not that she can't be a journalist. It's that she cannot face challenges. There are many examples of this. She cannot face the obvious challenge of pursuing a complicated guy like Jess without having the backup of Dean. She cannot face the obvious challenge of failing a test, so she snaps at Paris and Tristan. Mind you, they deserve the snapping, but not in that moment. They were focusing on their tests. They were quiet. She cannot face the obvious challenge of Jess moving on because he has the freedom to. So what does she do? She snaps at his girlfriend for words like bloaty. She cannot face the obvious challenge of Logan being a player, so she gives him the silent treatment for cheating on her. When we rewatch the exact episode after Rory steals the boat and Logan has to call Lorelai, and he finds out that Mitchum said something mean to her. There's this scene where she's talking about how Logan reacts to what Mitchum said, and it's actually quite heartbreaking. Logan wants to say something to Mitchum because he was hurtful, but she is not concerned about that. She doesn't care. She takes it personally that Logan did not disagree with Mitchum. That's what triggered her into stealing the boat. She's triggered because she thinks deep down Logan agrees that she may not have the ability to become a world-renowned journalist, which is why he's more concerned about the tone that Mitchum used or the words that Mitchum used, not the content of his critique. I'm not saying this to pile on. I actually felt really bad for her in those episodes because she was going through a lot. But the fact is, Rory was very insecure about her abilities as a journalist, not as a writer, not as a student, as a journalist. This is a very important detail. They actually explore this in Year in the Life when she actually does get the interview with Condé Nast, and she's pursuing these very boring stories and they just don't work. No one is saying Rory cannot write. They're saying she cannot identify a good story. And why is that? Because she does not have any good stories of her own. Life and Death Brigade was probably the closest she ever got to having real fun and having something interesting that she can report on and talk about. Even that is something she ends up judging and ridiculing. Rory has no spirit of adventure and no curiosity. And this is something that Logan has criticized her for. Remember that scene when he asks her to jump with him and she insists on being an observer because that's what journalists do? What does he do? He lists actual journalists who tested the boundaries of observation and it led them to some of their best works. Rory has never developed a healthy relationship to adventure, which is why she overcompensates by grabbing Logan and quite literally proving to him and by proxy to Mitchum that she can do crazy things like steal a boat and spend a few hours in jail. The problem with that is stealing a boat only seems like adventure to someone who's never been on an actual adventure. It's like, it reminds me of that quote, "Rudeness is a weak man's imitation of strength." Rory's half-baked adventure did nothing for her. It only traumatized her mom. Like I said, I'm not a Lorelai fan, but I actually felt bad for her. Blair, on the other hand, has a healthy balance of both. She is the definition of control and poise, but she's also spotted in a slip at a burlesque club. She is a straight-A student that also breaks into mental health institutes and kidnaps patients for fun. She's multifaceted and she owns it. Don't get me wrong, she knows how to judge. She can be judgmental and traditional, but is she ever boring? No. Now imagine if Mitchum had said something like that to Blair. Do you think she would drop out of Yale? No. She would have blackmailed him into letting her run the paper. Do I think Blair's schemes are perfect? Absolutely not. They blow up in her face all the time. It's probably the most entertaining part of the show. And yet you cannot help but have respect for her. Why? Because over the course of the show, she has not only been undermined and underestimated, she's been compared, she's been dethroned, and yet you cannot stop Blair. Even in her worst moments, she does not allow someone else's opinion of her to rewrite her future or derail her from her path. Watching Blair compete for attention and fight, being overshadowed by Serena, at one point to not even worrying about Serena and becoming her own person is nothing short of aspirational. We are not given a perfect character that does imperfect things and pretends they didn't. We're given an imperfect character that has to build self-esteem brick by brick. This brings us to the topic of jealousy and competition. When you think about frenemies, Blair and Serena come to mind. But if you compare their relationship to Paris and Rory, you realize just how strong the pick-me-go propaganda was back in the day. Rory's unaddressed, passive-aggressive, deep-rooted jealousy and insecurity taint almost every interaction she has with women in her age bracket. Remember the ballerina that she compared to a hippo and being overly critical of Paris's relationship with Asher when she herself had no problem sleeping around with a married ex-boyfriend that she previously cheated on. It's very difficult for me to watch how she interacts with Lindsay and Shane. Like the only thing those girls did wrong was exist in Rory's Stars Hollow and talk to men that she has expressed interest in. To think that Blair hitting Serena with a hockey stick was portrayed as peak mean girl behavior when the scene where Rory tells Shane that to her how ice is made is fascinating exists. What separates Blair's brand of insecurity from Rory's is the fact that Blair is a work in progress. She quite literally survives her teenage years being Darth Vader next to Sunshine Barbie, only to come to a point where she no longer resents said Barbie, outshines the Barbie in her own right. We can't say the same for Rory. Rory still thinks it's a good idea to talk to Dean about what a great relationship they used to have, asking about his kids and his current marriage, like they did not get together and ruin his previous one. Rory is still involved with engaged Logan. Rory is not trying to be a grown-up because she is busy. She is quite literally telling us that she peaked in high school and everything has been downhill since. There's no part of her that reflects on how she treated women in her life. Her relationship to Paris and Lane is transactional at best. I pretend to care about your family life in exchange for sleeping on your couch. How come there is a heartfelt dialogue about how Dean was her best boyfriend ever, but no introspection on how, if Paris had not challenged her the way she did, Rory's children years would have been an email. Instead, we get this pathetic freakout from Paris Geller over Tristan as if she does not have better things to do at that point in time. This brings us to the last and probably the most obvious similarity between Blair and Rory, and that is privilege. They're both privileged. Blair is honest about it and sees both its value and its limitations, and most importantly, makes no apologies for it. Rory does the opposite. She cosplays as just a normal girl until the second she's not approved of by Logan's family. And suddenly, do you know who my family is? I'm a Gilmore. She wants to be a part of the elite while constantly judging them for being elite. The best example of this is the article she wrote about Logan's party, where she reads him and his friends to Phil. And mind you, he should not have brought up the fact that he was paying for rent. That is unacceptable. But I don't agree with how Rory decided that everyone at that party deserved her wrath. Rory does this thing where the minute she feels a little insecure, she rips into other people. She dates Logan, but judges him constantly. And it reminds me of what Jess did to her. And I have to say, the same rules apply. If you find yourself writing hateful think pieces about your boyfriend and his friends, maybe don't date him. Blair, on the other hand, is seen as this cruel snob who ends up choosing a toxic guy like Chuck Bass or Louis Grimaldi. But let's back up for a second. Being rich is one thing, being toxic is another. Why are we assuming that only rich men are toxic when Dan was Gossip Girl in the flesh? Blair has every right to want a rich and prestigious, affluent partner for herself, and I don't think that she's asking for too much. Blair has a very realistic way of looking at wealth. For her, it's only a tool and nothing more. But for Rory, it's like this unfair advantage that she wants. She wants to enjoy it, but you cannot tell her that she has an unfair advantage. It's like if Rory was a Nepo baby, she would be a Jenner, privileged but in complete denial, whereas Blair would be a Kardashian, privileged, aware, and grateful for every ounce of it. Blair's honesty and self-awareness makes her character so compelling even today. In comparison, Rory's character continues to deteriorate. Every time you watch it, you think, nah, she couldn't get worse. And then, she gets worse. If you are still on the fence about who the bad guy was, remember, Rory completely ignores Lane and treats her problems like background noise, and Paris is not even considered a friend. Whereas Blair, despite all the betrayals she has faced, when push comes to shove, she is literally Serena, Nate, and Chuck's guardian angel. She has fought uncles, dads, angry billionaires, second wives, stepmoms, you name it. She is always there to protect her friends, and I think that is probably why people love her character so much.